Good evening. It's Wednesday night, so I'm at soccer and wearing my seatbelt once again. So I figured I'd do another one of my, I know the school year's wrapped up, right? But I feel I'd do another one of my little perspectives from a teacher in Alberta, since there's still so much happening. If you've been watching the news, you'll see that the Alberta government, or UCP government, has promised to deal with violence and aggression in the classrooms this fall. They have a whole a plan to make a plan, I guess is what you would say. Anyways, this is how government works. And then I like the idea that they want stakeholders information, to put in their 2 bits about what they think is going on. But do you ever think maybe a good place to start would be talking to teachers or even administrators, right? Like somebody who's in the building who actually, knows the reality of what we're working at. Because when you say violence and aggression in the classrooms, I'm like, that's a pretty broad topic. And what are we actually talking about here? Because legitimately, violence is an issue and aggression is an issue in our classrooms sometimes. I don't think it's the norm for most people. I really hope it isn't. And if that is your world, my heart goes out to you. I've taught in classrooms where it was the norm to have aggression and violence, but we'll get to that. So some specific situations. But in a general education classroom in Alberta, the violence and aggression that we're seeing or experiencing comes from, in my perspective, from 2 places, mostly. It comes from parents. I've dealt with a lot of, not a lot, but a few in my career, some really unpleasant parent responses over the years to different things. Aggressive. Yeah. I've had to call for help 3 times in my career. I really wished I had a panic button. I've had a parent come over my desk a couple of times. The school I was at that did that, after that, because I wasn't the only person who had that happen, they moved our parent-teacher interview night to the gym. So we were all around the edges. And then I know it compromised the privacy of conversations, but I was safe. I didn't have any parents getting that mad that they'd come at me over a desk. But the other issue that I face aggression for, and the one that I've probably dealt with the most, hasn't been the fights in the schoolyard, hasn't been the pushing and shoving in the hallways. There's a little bit of that. You expect to break up a fight every now and then, especially at the high school level, right? Middle school, high school, with the hormones, and they're basically just like rutting deer. If you think about what these kids would be doing if they were animals in the wild, this is what they're doing in the classrooms, right? So there's a little bit of that physical kind of aggressive stuff that goes on, and some legitimate fights that need to be broken up and things. But for the most part, those are not the norm. They're certainly not a daily occurrence, and I can't think of any school where that's a daily occurrence, and if it is, that's a whole other issue. I've been at the school I'm at now this is my 5th year. I personally have intervened on 2 fights in the whole time I've been there, neither of which were serious. And I know of 2 other teachers who maybe have. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal. Okay, we don't want this happening, but it's not something we normally have to deal with. And I think that the structures we have in place to deal with that are fine. I mean, to deal with it, right? To prevent it from happening, we're not there yet. But the one that I deal with the most is with my children in my classroom with special needs, right? And once again, let me preface that I am 100% pro-inclusion. I myself have a diagnosis of autism, ADHD, dyslexia, the laundry list. I believe we all have a voice, we all matter, and they should all be in my classroom with appropriate support. I think I spoke in a previous live about how I have advocated for my own daughter not necessarily to be kept in class, because her meltdowns were so aggressive at that point that they'd have to clear the classroom, right? They weren't staffed to support her needs, and that impacted everybody else, right? And so I never felt that my daughter's right to an education meant that she should be in a situation where she couldn't be successful. Number 1, why was she melting down? But number 2, that it impacted that many people, right? As a parent myself too, right? If my kid came home and said, oh my gosh, we lost, 20 minutes of lesson time today because we had to clear the room because of this kid, I'd be like, oh, okay. And then if it kept happening, I'd be like, okay, no, why are they allowing this to continue, right? Because it's not even about stopping sometimes. It's okay, it's continuing, why? And I think that this is going to be the big problem when we have this conversation, because they're looking for, how are we going to deal with it? And it sounds like it's solution based, right? But really, you need to be looking at why it's happening and be reactive to that first, right? We have to be proactive so that we can be reactive, right? Yeah, we can suspend kids who fight. Yeah, all those sorts of things. I don't suspect that the majority of the complaints that teachers have, and it's not even complaints, reports. Whenever we are assaulted, we're supposed to report it. Do we? Hello, do we have time? Good Lord, I see 600 kids every 2 days this last year. If I had to, even keeping track, like if I have 19 kids who needed behavior tracking, I have all these little like saved sheets and I'd have to go in and no, I'm not, no. I mean, unless it's serious, like they bit me or I'm bleeding or I needed medical attention, or I don't know, if it was more than just tracking data, I'd probably be more likely to get in and get it done. But it just, at the end of the day, you go home and you go, oh shoot, I forgot to chart that. I forgot to log that today. Because it's not built into our schedule in any way, shape, or form to do those sorts of reporting of data. So, problem number one, it's underreported. So what they're talking about as far as aggressive things that are happening to teachers and to other students is vastly underreported. I would wager that. Number two, a lot of what we're seeing is preventable. Behavior is communication. So, if a child is acting and is acting out, right, in an aggressive manner, okay, why? I mean, it brings me back to something I've said to my own child after soccer games when he's lost, he's mad. Your feelings are valid, your response is not. But can he control his response? To a degree, right? So I feel I can say that to him. Your feelings are definitely valid, dude, but no, we don't kick the door of the car because we're mad, right? Like, no, let's get some regulation here. We got to figure out how to regulate. But I know that he's going to get that upset when he loses, or used to, right? And so what would I do? Well, I came up with scripting, right? We have, I'm autistic, I like scripts. So we have things that we say every time. What do we say to ourselves? You know, well, I'm not the only player on the field. You're right, you're not, right? What part of this was your responsibility? Like, where do you hold some onus in this that you could have changed the outcome of the game? Okay, let's start there, right? And then maybe we can talk about what else happened with our teammates, but we're not going to be calling them down, and we're not, right? Like, all of this needs to be taught. Like, nobody is born knowing how to regulate themselves and their emotions, I don't think. I think we learn, and it's either because we're intentionally taught, you know, through teaching us to, first of all, identify our feelings and recognize what they are. And then we can start to, you know, manipulate and work with them so that we aren't having these aggressive outbursts. But in the absence of that, historically, we've learned by trial and error, right? Like you ever have that kid that you're like, oh my God, you run your mouth one more time. One of these days, someone's going to hit you, right? Like you'll hear about a kid who got in a fight and you're like, yeah, he was probably running his mouth, right? But did he learn? Well, probably, maybe that was what that kid needed to learn, which I'm not saying is appropriate, but dude, some of us learn the hard way. Cautionary tale here. I have to do everything the hard way. But a lot of the things that we're seeing, as I said, are preventable, and it, not so much as in the moment necessarily preventable, but if we had these kids set up appropriately to begin with, we wouldn't be seeing these behaviors. Right? So when we wanted, the other thing about behaviors is you can't extinguish them. You can't just stop them, right? You can extinguish over time by replacing. But if this is a kid's go-to in communication, I get mad, I kick. Well, what are we going to give them to do instead? Right? And I've got strategies. I know how to do that. I've done it with my own children. We used to have a social story called Babies Are Not for Biting, because my daughter went through a phase where she bit her younger brother so much. But again, it's communication. Most of the time it tells us frustration. It might be anger. It might be disappointed. It might be overwhelmed, but it's still communication. If a child is acting out, if any human is acting in any particular way, it's reflecting of what they're trying to say, right? And we have to remember again that how much of communication is verbal? Less than 20%. I've read anywhere from 13 to 25%, depending on the studies I've read over the years. That means that like 75% or more of our communication is nonverbal. So yeah, that's a whole other thing. Why do we put so much emphasis on, the verbal part of it? So I think if we want to actually address the issue, we need to make sure that the kids who are vulnerable, the kids with special needs, the kids who are coming in from traumatic situations, like, because a lot of that behavior, how do I say this? It presents similarly, right? So some of the ADHD behavior I see is actually trauma response behavior. How I handle it's exactly the same though, right? Like I still need to teach the kid the vocabulary to identify their emotions. I need to teach them strategies to deal with it. I need to teach them that their emotions are valid, right? But thoughts are not facts. Feelings are not facts, right? It's just information that, and what are we going to do with that information and how are we going to make those next decisions? It doesn't matter why for those cases, for the how, right? But it does matter why it happened in the first place. So how does this kid get to the point where they're so frustrated that their only response is to act out? Well, one example I can think of, I have a child who was emerging verbal, we'll call him, a young man with Down syndrome, and high school. And this kid would get quite angry sometimes when I would not allow him to do just whatever he wanted. You know, first we have to finish our math and then we can go and do whatever the preferred activity happened to be that day. And I don't remember why. I don't know why. It's a long time ago too. But one day he was mad enough at me that he kicked me. And he was wearing his winter boots and he kicked me so hard that it broke the skin of my shins through my jeans, right? I was impressed by his strength, but he had just gotten so frustrated that that's how it came out. It exploded. Not appropriate, but our intervention was to go and look at how it got to this point. Where could we help him make different decisions earlier so we don't get to this point, right? Because you can't kick your teacher. You certainly shouldn't be kicking anybody hard enough that it hurts them the way it hurt me. About 3 weeks later, after we'd been working on some of these sort of skills and behavior, we had given him some visual cards. How are you feeling? You know, you can point things out. We did more check-ins with this kid. We decided, well, we're not just going to say how you doing every half hour, you know, like a lot more check-ins just to make sure that they didn't feel overwhelmed, that they felt like they actually had a voice. Because when you can't speak, do you think you feel like you have any power in the situation? Right? Because people don't necessarily listen to our nonverbal cues. In fact, we are taught to ignore them. We are taught to, as women especially, oh, don't listen to that feeling in your stomach that makes you, oh, that guy's making me feel uncomfortable, right? No, instead of being taught that, no, we really need to honor what our body is telling us, right? So if you don't feel you have the power, you have to express yourself some way. So after we'd been working on this for a little while with this guy, something happened again. He lost his temper on me and he swore. This time he told me to F off. And I was ready to give the kid a cookie because that is huge progress from being like super violent, aggressive over something to a similar situation where all he did was swear at me. Now, is this okay? No. This is a good place to start. We should not punish people for moving in the direction we want them to move, right? You don't reinforce those positive gains if there's a punitive, right? Which is why I have issues with PBIS, and we'll probably get to that in this conversation. We'll see. But he used his words. So this was an improvement. Now, what's the next step? Okay, let's give you a different angry word, dude. Oh, fig Newton, or, go fry an egg, Mrs. Seymour, or whoever I was at the time, right? Like, that was our next step, and that's where we worked to, right? So if the government says, okay, we're going to stop aggression, we're going to stop it, so we're going to have a plan so that you're not going to get kicked in the shins by that kid. Well, okay, so does that mean I'm going to get an extra EA in my room? Because that's what that kid needed. He needed some more one-on-one support that I, as the teacher, and I was in a special room. It was a high-impact placement program I was in. So it's kind of segregated, like legit. The kids were in phys ed and music and things with the main student potty, but they had their academics and their life skills separately. And so there was 6 of them and me, and 1 EA for sure, if not 2. So at that time, with 2 EAs and myself and the 6, we actually could get things done. But that wasn't enough if I wanted to do any cooking or anything. Like, yeah, I'm going to give these kids vegetable peelers. No. So, or hot glue guns for crafts, goodness gracious, right? Like the terror. But seriously, with support, these kids can do these tasks. And they need to learn to do these tasks. So, okay, so we want the aggression to stop. Number 1, let's start putting some supports in place so the kids don't get so overwhelmed. All right? And what can that look like? Well, as a teacher, it takes me a lot of time to modify and accommodate kids. I'm not saying this to complain, right? Because I know when I take the time to do this, I've talked a little bit about how I can color code music notes, and it makes a difference for my kids with dyslexia reading. It takes me time, right? But when I do it, the behaviors, the negative behaviors that I see diminish significantly. Because when you remove the barrier to learn, the kid can learn. And the kid wants to learn, the kid wants to be successful. I don't think any kid who's getting in trouble really wants to be doing that. A lot of it's, well, there's a lot of reasons why, but nobody wants to be in trouble. Nobody wants to be doing the wrong thing. Some kids make poor choices because they haven't been taught that there are other choices, right? I've had students who come to school, and when I'm kind to them, they lash out because they don't know how to handle kindness. If I called them an idiot and a loser, well, that's their language, And I mean, okay, so how am I supposed to reduce aggression when I have kids who are so defensive because of their home environments, right? So that's a whole nother issue too with the trauma-based. But from the special education perspective, the first thing you need to do is make sure that the kids are doing work that is at the level that is appropriate for them. So you need to give the teachers time to make those modifications, right? It takes time. For me, for a song, it takes me about 10 to 15 minutes per song to modify it per instrument. If I have 6 kids that I'm doing this for, that's at least an hour a week I'm spending, right? At least, especially the first 3 or 4 weeks of school when I'm handing out a lot of literature. Or heaven forbid I buy a method book. I have to do the whole book. It takes time, right? So providing us time to do those sorts of things. This is above and beyond what we need for regular prep, for returning emails, for phone calls, which we already don't get enough of, right? Legitimately, I had 10-minute preps this last year. Every day, 10 minutes. Yeah, I got to watch announcements and go pee before I wasn't able to go pee for another 4 hours. I was grateful for the little bit of softer start, but it wasn't a prep, right? It wasn't enough time to sit down and even read emails. So I think the first thing you could do is start giving us the time, which means you're going to need more teachers because we're already working sometimes past our full-time equivalency. I know this. I think that, it requires hiring more staff, right? To fill spaces, right? Like, I don't even know, but we do. So first of all, we need more time so we can do these modifications. Secondly, some of these things are above our pay grade, right? I have a background in psychology. I have some of my level B assessment stuff. I can do Wyatt's and Whisks and things we do with educational assessments, but that isn't what most teachers are versed in. And when you take that type of training, it gives you a different perspective because, a lot of the times we look at why isn't the kid doing it, but we don't look at what they're telling us they can do, right? To find starting points. And we don't look at it within context. We tend to look at things as snapshots. It's like report cards. They're just a snapshot in time, right? They're not legitimately this is, I don't know how to explain it better than that, but it's how your kid was doing at that moment when I wrote down a mark, right? It's flexible. It changes, right? And so when you're looking at putting in the types of supports these kids need, some of it's going to require some training for our teachers to be able to do this. Or better yet, how about those teachers you hire to give us time, come in with the training, and so then they can do that as well. They can help us out. They can mentor us through that process because it is a process and we're all lifelong learners, I hope, as teachers. I'm happy to learn. I need the material to be available to me, and I need the time to do it without it being an extra. Right? That's the whole thing. Okay, I can do it, but then what am I giving up? Right? What am I not going to do? So what are you taking off my plate? I've mentioned supervision before. That'd be sure nice. Hire supervisors. Something, right? Do you know how happy teachers get when they come into the staff room and somebody's dropped off cookies? We're a pretty easy group. Leftover pizza from the sport team the night before. Ecstatic teachers at lunch hour. We are not hard to please. I'm telling you. Right? Work with us. We're here to help the kids. So if you want to reduce aggression, you need to address the root causes of it. And in order to do that, you're going to need to give teachers the support they need to provide the accommodations, develop them, and get the training. Okay. Secondly, along that lines, well, no, not quite. Let's talk about the trauma kids. So how do we handle the kids who come to school and they don't know what love is? They don't know what a caring environment is. They don't know, and this is more of your students than you would like to admit, I think. What do we do with these kids? Well, they need supports as well, right? So we have these people at school, and they're amazing. They're family school liaison workers, FSLs, I think they're called. Maybe they change the acronyms. They change all the time. Basically, it's like a school counselor. Okay, in elementary schools, we have them all the way through. And their caseload, they can see a student, I think, once without parent consent. And then after that, there has to be parent consent for them to work with your kid. And they help build those social emotional strategies. They talk about their day. It's talk therapy, basically, right? It's an adult who cares, who's going to listen to their concerns and maybe help them reframe their perspective so they can handle things in a more healthy way, right? Now, I have a kid who needs this, but there's no room on her caseload, right? So we have 2 FSLs in the building I was in. 2, might have been 2.5, might have been. 1,200 kids. Yet no. How many kids do you think they have on their caseloads? I don't have numbers for you, so I'm not going to even pretend to make things up, but I'm sure it's more than 30 or 40 kids. And they have to try and check in with these kids every day. And some of these kids have such severe emotional needs. Yeah, I had a kid disclose suicidal thoughts in grade 5 last year. Some of our kids are really struggling. And our staff isn't necessarily trained to handle that. As teachers, like I have my mental health first aid as well, and a life of experience in mental health issues, like I said, cautionary tale. So I at least am not like freaked out when I'm put in those situations. I'm like, actually, I'm the kind of person you'll want in a crisis because I don't react till later. I react inside, but outside I'm like, okay, yeah, no, what are we going to do with this, right? So I know we're not going to leave this young lady alone. We're going to sit with them. We're going to, I know the steps I need to take to keep this child safe and to make sure they get the help they need. And I know we don't take this lightly. We don't. I mean, in my 25 years of teaching, I have buried 7 children who've lost their life to suicide. 7. So let me tell you, no, my heart knows that aggression and these sorts of things all contribute to this too, right? Because you've got these kids who are hurt and they hurt others, right? And it just becomes this cycle, not to mention the emotional end of what we have to go through in helping these kids. I have some of my own traumas that I've had to work through and even some PTSD stuff from some of the situations I've had in my career. And we don't have even the way to triage this, right? Like, we're going to have some solutions for you in the fall. All right. Yeah, no, you're not, because we still need a good way to triage these kids. And then we need the first level of supports before we can even look at secondary and tertiary supports with kids. Like, we don't have what we need in the building to do this right now. And I don't know how over the summer you're going to make that work. And I don't know how touring around the province and getting people's input is going to help at this point. I mean, yeah, you need it, but dude, you should have been talking to us all along. I mean, have you been listening to us? Oh, wait, no. Sorry, Danny. I know. Oh, sorry. You're not your Danielle. Sorry, Danielle. I don't want to call you Danny because maybe your parents don't know that anybody calls you that. And I don't want to get in trouble for not using your full real name, says the mother of a child who goes by Q. His name's Quentin. But, we're not set up for success. Not even close. I want to talk to you about a couple of incidences of aggression that I personally have experienced in my career and how it was handled badly. And maybe I can come up with a couple that were handled well. And we'll see. So when I was pregnant, 2007, with my child Ian, who just graduated from high school. Good job, Ian. I think I was about 6 months pregnant at the time, 5 or 6 months. And I have a history of not being able to carry babies to term. I've been pregnant 9 times and I have 5 children. Pregnancy is always very stressful for me. This is my 4th child at this point, but my 7th pregnancy. And so I was really stressed about this in general, but you continue on, you do what you do. And I was teaching at a high school, a 7 to 12. And I was in my room and a kid came running down the hall and he's yelling, Mrs. Seymour, there's a fight. So I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes. But anyways, put down my eraser and I follow the kid down the hall. Now, my rule with physical fights is this: if my voice does not stop it, Nope, I'm not moving. I would never. No. Do you know how much adrenaline is going through those kids' bodies? I've tried once to pull apart some kids in grade 4 who got into a physical altercation, and they were all stronger than me. Yeah, no, you don't step in. You don't. You're putting yourself at risk, and then you're no use to anybody. So as I'm heading out the door to the parking lot, I can see a lot of kids gathered around what's happening. And as I step out onto the patio, I just yell, "That's it, stop it." Right? The adult voice, 90% of the time, I'm not even joking, 90% of the time, these grown boys will just, and they stop. And that's usually enough for me to then interject some kind of instruction, like, all right, get over here, you that way, you that, you know what I mean? Like, but you got to get their attention. So I do my yelp and they stop. And I'm like, all right, get up. And I can see the kid on the ground is not in good shape. He's bleeding pretty badly because he's been getting his head smacked into the sidewalk. So so then I approach because I'm like, I'm here to do first aid. The other kid has stopped. He is backed away, right? In fact, he was a good 10 feet away from me, the aggressor. Well, I'm calling him the aggressor because he was the one who was on top when I came out the door. And so I said, all right, you sit down right where you're at and wait. I'm going to check on this kid and we're going to go into the office together. Kid complies, no problem. As I'm leaning over to check on the kid who's bleeding, out of the crowd comes another young man who proceeds to assault me physically. He began punching me. He got between me and the injured kid and was punching me in the stomach. I'm pregnant and I'm trying not to freak out and back away and protect myself. And he was just screaming at me about how dare I stop the fight. And then I think he realized he'd overstepped. I don't know what, but he, just took off. And I let him leave and I made sure I got the kids up into the office. And then I went right across the street, thankfully, right across the street to the emergency room. And my child was fine. But, the stress of it and there were some physical repercussions for me and my unborn child as a result of that. And the emotional end of it was just, you can't even chart. And so I wanted more done to the child who came out and assaulted me than I wanted for consequences for the 2 boys who'd been fighting. Because, that was what it was. It was broken up. There's things in place. But this kid came out of the blue unprovoked. And just because he wasn't getting what he wanted out of the situation, he attacked me. And so I decided I was going to press charges. And I did. And I was not supported. I had to use my personal day. We get one of those a year to go to court because the school would not support me in pressing charges against this underage child who got, what did he get? It was like 90 hours of community service. There were repercussions and it was on the books. And I just felt that clearly the repercussions in school weren't enough. So maybe this kid needed a wake up call. He's 17. Like, dude, let's learn this lesson now. Like, that's where a place I come from. I wasn't coming from anger, revenge, whatever. I probably had every reason to feel those feelings and I was pretty upset about it. But at the same time, I just was like, who treated that kid that way that he thinks it's okay to act that way? And if that's the situation they're coming from, okay, I think the best influence I can have to help this child make better choices in the future is to involve the law, right? Because I wanted good outcomes for everybody. And this was a long time ago, probably 10, well, what I say, I was pregnant with Ian, so it's more than 18 years ago now. It's 18 years ago. But this kid's gone on to be a relatively successful human being as far as I know. And not at all like they were in high school, thank goodness. But the fact that happened was terrible. The fact that nobody had my back was even worse, right? I was told just brush it off. Boys will be boys. Kids do things when they're angry. He wasn't even one of the ones in the fight. He was a bystander who came out and attacked me, right? And so, okay, you're going to have some solutions for that. Well, okay, so then that means you're going to talk to Danielle. You're going to make sure that my school will support me in following through if I need to go above and beyond and involve, outside agencies to support these kids so that they don't continue to beat up pregnant women. Okay? Don't you think that's a lesson we want them to learn in high school? Don't hit people. Probably want them to learn it in kindergarten. But, we'll take what we can get. Another incident that I can think of, and I wasn't the one who was attacked, but I was in as much danger as the other kids in the room. I was teaching in a class where 2 of the kids really, really didn't like each other. One was a trans individual, and one was the absolute opposite of that, hated everything about that. Yeah, they could not have been more politically, ideologically, personality, any more diverse humans than they were. And they were both kind of the alpha type that kind of polarize and can really, have a lot of influence on what's going on in the room. And it was a small class. Admittedly, there was only 12 kids in the class and me. I was their 4th teacher of the semester, and it was March. So January, February, March. I was their 4th teacher. Did I say it was Science 1424? I'm a music teacher. So the reason they put me there was, you're good with these kids. They're my people. I get it, right? The undiagnosed ADHD kids. Yeah, we vibe well together, right? Like the kids who make the bad decisions, we vibe well together sometimes. Because I'm patient and I know they're human and growing and learning, and I don't know what it is, but we worked well. But just because we can doesn't mean we should, because this will burn you out, right? If you get those classes year after year after year, yeah, I did burn out. I ended up with a bleeding ulcer over it, and other things. But these 2 young men, individuals, in my class, one day it escalated to the point of a desk being thrown at the window and an attempt to stab the other kid. And I was able to de-escalate the situation using skills that I've learned, and I will say by the grace of God and luck, whatever you believe. I was blessed that I was able to diffuse that situation before anybody got seriously hurt. The principal walked in the door right after it had occurred, because I yelled for help. The teacher in the room next door ran for help. When they came back, I'd already gotten the one kid out of the room. So I was with the one kid who had been just about stabbed, and I was trying to calm them down enough to figure out, because I didn't even know where this came from. It was one of those situations that just blew up. Like, it's kind of seething all the time, and then there's just one thing said, and that's sort of what happened. It was like a spark, and off we go. I actually ended up standing on my desk to get out of the way of the boys, yelling at the one kid, just get out, right? And thankfully he did. Principal comes and sees me. I'm still standing on the desk, says, "You good?" I'm like, "No." He says, "Okay." And he walked out of the room. He didn't take the kid with me who was still in crisis. He didn't say anything to the other students in the room who were cowering. I suspect he went to find the child who had left the scene and needed to be dealt with as well. But I have never felt so alone in a stressful situation as that particular moment. And one of the kids, as they got up from their desk, went, "They don't really care what happens to teachers, do they?" And I'm like, no, they do. He's just gone to get the other kid because we care about the kid. But I'm like, dude, no, they can see you don't care, right? So what are you going to do about that, Danielle? What do you do about administrators who aren't able to support their staff? What do you do about teachers who are put in situations that are really unmanageable without support? Like, how did I not have an EA in that room? Why didn't I have a panic button? There are situations where we need things like that if we're going to deal with aggression and violence in the classroom, right? And I know people don't like the idea of panic buttons and things. It's so negative, but sweetie, it's safety, right? If somebody goes off in my room for whatever reason, and I need support, if I have to get to the phone, which is kind of over in the corner, and in my band room, it's behind the timpanis, or like in my other classroom I was in at that time, I didn't actually have a phone in that particular room. My band room at that school, it was in an office, right? So how am I supposed to call for help, right? There's a strategy maybe you could look putting in. You could wire all of our rooms with panic buttons. I don't know, but are we at the point where that's a necessity? In some situations, unfortunately, yes. So when we have children with undiagnosed special needs, or who have had delayed diagnoses, so therefore delayed treatment, they've missed out on a lot of the early intervention stuff. So as a result, they have built up a persona that they are, this tough kid, and they're the bad kid, and that's how everyone sees them, right? That's where we're starting when you got these guys in high school, right? Okay, so yeah, maybe panic buttons wouldn't be a terrible idea, or a lanyard. Well, we can't wear lanyards, right? Because we could hang ourselves on them. They're dangerous. I've had students legit where I guess I'm not wearing earrings or scarves this year. And that's not saying that these kids are bad kids. It's saying, okay, I know who I'm working with. I know what their their variety of behaviors I could see from these humans. I know where their baseline is. I know where their off the charts is, and it's possible we're going to hit that. So what am I going to do to keep myself safe? Right? So if I can't kick my shoes off or run in them, I don't wear them. And I teach general ed now, right? Like I'm not in this high special needs placement program that I was in at that point. But even with the regular kids I see, regular classroom streaming, you know, like we have such a wide variety of needs in our room that are unsupported. And until those supports are in place, we're going to continue to see the behaviors. And the behaviors of violence and aggression are communication. And those kids are telling us, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. This is unfair. Because sometimes it is, because we can't provide what they need. That their perspective on the situation is skewed, right? Because they're coming from another context altogether that we don't understand. This is their norm sometimes, right? Like I said earlier, who treated you that way that you think it's okay to behave that way, right? I once heard an administrator say that to a kid, and I thought, wow, that is a powerful statement, right? Because let's acknowledge that these little humans that we're entrusted with don't come to us. They're not in a vacuum, right? They know what they know, right? It's the kid I got frustrated with in kindergarten, like, stay on your spot. Can you stay on the blue spot? See that blue circle? And eventually I realized he didn't know what the color blue was or what a circle was, hence he wasn't staying on the blue circle. So my frustration, although valid, is misplaced because I'm the one setting the kid up to feel that frustration, right? If we don't know the background, if we don't know their baselines, if we don't have any of that information and data, then it makes it really hard to make good decisions moving forward. It makes it really hard to support them. So it boils down to really, at the end of the day, what we need to deal with this problem is support. And what that support looks like is going to be very different depending on the different age groups and contexts and what we're dealing with. When we're talking about kids with special needs, what that support looks like is a lot more time for the teachers to prepare for the needs of those individual students. I need dedicated time in my timetable to make accommodations, modifications, and those sorts of things, right? It looks like EA support. Educated EAs in the room are a lifesaver. Seriously, because they are trained to deal with specific kids and specific behaviors in a way that a generalist isn't, right? They're a different skill set. They're certainly not paid for the skill set they have. Let me tell you that, because they deal with some of our hardest kids all day, every day. Which leads me to the phrase hardest kids, because someone once said the hardest kids are often the ones that need your love the most. Well, sometimes they won't let you love them, right? So what do we do about the kids who are coming to school and they aren't feeling safe? Right? They don't know what a safe adult is, right? Yeah, we can establish that over time, but we need to know that's the problem we're dealing with. What about kids who are hungry, right? Do you realize how much breakfast programs improve, especially the first hour of the day for our kids? If a kid is hungry, if a kid is scared, if a kid is overtired, and a kid feels unsafe, they're not going to learn. It's called Maslow's hierarchy, right? And in order for a brain to even be able to learn, to be able to get past that amygdala response of adrenaline, right? That and up into here where we can actually be cognition and learning, we have to have a few things. We have to be fed, we have to be safe, and we have to have sleep, right? Like, it's so important. So here's an idea. How about we fund breakfast for all the students in the province every day, every student? I don't care if they're still hungry in middle school, so feed them too. Swear to God, hangry children. It's a thing, right? Like, I mean, the amount of snacks that I've purchased myself out of my own pocket, even when, I've worked in schools where we've had kids where we as a staff kind of unofficially sign up for who's going to bring the kid lunch. Believe me, teachers, we're doing everything we can for these kids. So how about we start by feeding them? That'd be a great start. So, Danielle, I would like to hear that you have a plan for a fully funded breakfast and even better, a lunch program for all the students in Alberta this fall. Because that right then and there is going to stop some of the behaviors. It's going to remove barriers. It's going to, in their brains, so that they can learn. Okay. Second thing, let's deal with the overcrowding issue. Because when you have too many people in a tight place, they're going to get in each other's faces a lot much more, right? And then because kids all are different, somebody might bump you, and that might just be a legitimate, they bumped you. But if that's not how you perceive it, then suddenly things escalate, right? So we're not setting kids up for success by putting them in overcrowded situations. So Danielle, I know that's already on your list. You know we're overcrowded. We've told you, not just me. We've told you, okay? But if you want to reduce violence, you need to deal with this, okay? Thirdly, you need to provide us the time to provide the supports the kids need. I think that means you have to hire more teachers. I don't know where you're going to get them from. I don't. Because we have a serious sub shortage. I mean, in the last 2 weeks of school, I can think of 3 days we were short more than 2 subs in our building. Yeah, there's days I've taught math as a music teacher because we had no subs. I'm sorry to your children for unteaching them, by the way. I do what I can do. And then I think lastly, I think, sweetheart, Danielle, my friend, how about we look at the curriculum? How about we look at what we're teaching and when we're teaching it and how we're teaching it, or what you're giving us to work with and some resources and things, so that teachers aren't so stressed about all this new stuff that they're trying to throw at these kids. Because when we are constantly having to learn everything new and start from scratch, we don't have the ability to do our best, and teach our best. Your first time through a lesson is never your best time through the lesson, right? And all this new content without resources, they're just like, here's some new outcomes. Back when I went to school, I'm going to assume some of you are as old as me, and we had textbooks, right? Maybe they still use high school textbooks, but they're digital a lot of the time. And right? No, we don't have a textbook to go with our new curriculum, right? It's just not there. So everybody's developing everything from scratch. In fact, now I might be incorrect here, so forgive me if I'm speaking wrongly, but there was like a request right before I went out on break here in June. There was a message that went around, and they're like, hey, teachers, are you developing cool new resources and you want to share them with other teachers, kind of thing? Like, we want you to share them with us so we can share them with everybody for the new curriculum. Now, teachers, we already do this, right? If I get a new course, I'm like, hey, sweetheart, what did you do for this unit? And then they share their stuff with me. And then I do it their way the first time, and then I make it my own from there. But I start with something from somebody else, right? But I buy the person a coffee, if they share stuff with me. There's no incentive for teachers to share their resources with the government, because it was like, hey, do you want to volunteer your stuff? Now, if I misread that and they were actually looking to purchase resources from teachers, right, then okay, I support that, right? Absolutely. If you are going to pay me for my time and my experience and my expertise, yeah, I'll take that. That's a fair deal. But that didn't how that read. It read like, hey, you want to share some stuff with us? Hey, because we forgot to build resources. Hey, and people are complaining because they're overwhelmed and overworked. And hey, you got something good over there. Do you want to share it with us, please? No. Sorry, Danielle. We don't want to just share things for free. We do too much for free already. If we just did work to rule, I know every time I hate it. I'm a music teacher. It kills my program. I hate it. But there's a lot of things we do that make students' lives better, that provide students safe places after school, that aren't required of us, right? I mean, teaching is teaching. It isn't. We've talked about this. So I guess if you want to reduce violence and aggression in the schools, you need to actually support teachers and provide us the time and the resources, and you need to support students so that they're in a position to learn. That's all. I know that's not all. That's huge, but that's the problem, all right? The classroom complexity issues all. Find me one that the answer isn't more support in some area. Find me one. I challenge you. In the comments, please put something. Find me one thing that kids are facing every day that needs to change, that isn't going to boil down to they needed support or the teachers needed support to provide them the things, right? You're not going to find it, because we are teaching in a system that is limping along, and teachers are doing the best they can, and we do a damn good job with what little we have. But it's not sustainable, and we're reaching a breaking point, and we don't want to be here, but we are. So you can put together all the little panels you want and tour the the province and, those sorts of things. It's not going to solve the problem. The solutions have already been laid out for you. The government isn't listening. So I guess parents, it's up to you. You need to help us lobby for these changes. You need to bring this to their attention. You need to say, I heard a teacher say that they need support, and I believe them, right? I mean, I hear about parents who complain sometimes about things that are legitimate complaints, right? Oh my God, my kid has had 6 different subs in the last 3 weeks, and the teacher still isn't back. And you're right. That's not conducive to great learning. You're right. But what's the issue? Why is the teacher out? Well, first of all, none of your business. But chances are it's a medical leave, or it's a stress leave, which is a medical leave. The number of teachers I personally know who have had their doctors say to them, sweetie, you need some time. You need a break from this. This is killing you. I can't even count it on both my hands and both my feet. It's a big number of people I personally know. Oh, wait, I'm one of them. I've been out twice in my career because I worked to the point where I couldn't work anymore. And what really killed me was that my best efforts weren't enough. Like, this is part of my whole story, I guess, with my feelings about self-worth. When you are never good enough, what does that tell you? What does that internal voice in your head start saying? Right? Like, no, especially with someone with ADHD who my whole life I was told, oh, you have such potential, if you just tried, and you're lazy. And no, I am not those things, and I am trying. So what really hurts is when you say what I did wasn't good enough. That was my best, because I don't half-ass things. I'm sorry, that's not who I am. I'm all or nothing. So when I'm giving you something, it's my best. For better or worse, sometimes for worse, right? But it is the best I can give you in that moment. And does that fluctuate day to day? Absolutely, right? As with all of us, right? Some days we're able to give more than others. But we're burning out. And then we need to take the time to recharge. But while we're out, we know that our students are going through multiple subs because school divisions do things like not hire until actually people leave. Like even with mat leaves, like they know you're going out, right? Like it's not a secret, but a couple of divisions I've worked in, they don't even advertise your job till you are out officially on leave. So that leaves gaps, right? They're so reactive, like so reactive. Do you know once I had to get a letter from a doctor to say that I was pregnant after I'd given birth to qualify for my leave because I'd had the baby so early? Yeah, I'm standing there with the baby in my arms. I'm saying to my doctor, dude, the guy, my boss says I need this note. And he's like, you showed him a picture of your kid. I'm like, I know. And I'm about 50 pounds skinnier than I was 3 weeks ago too. But nope, sorry, they need a letter. Yeah, the system isn't designed to support your kids. And that's not okay because the teachers are working their asses off to try and do their best to do that. And you just can't settle for that. You guys need to get loud. You need to tell the powers that be that you voted for, because some of you did vote UCP, I'm sure, right? Like there's got to be some teachers who voted UCP. I'm sure there are. Just because I'm not one of them doesn't mean that those elected representatives don't represent me. They're still my elected official, right? They're still supposed to hear my concerns, and some of them really don't get that. Because as an elected official, you still represent all the people, not just the people who voted for you. And I'm hearing bits and pieces about the UCP splitting, like there's the non-separatists who are like, dude, these guys are nuts. We're gonna split. And splitting the vote's great. Please do that. Please. Abandon the official UCP and form your new little party, you little progressive conservative-y type people. Please, because that's good for everybody right now. Because the party in power right now isn't listening, right? It doesn't matter that I didn't vote for them. Because there were times I was pissed at the NDP too, and I voted for them. Or I vote like Green, because I'm a little BC girl, right? I'm a little bit of a hippie here. No, whoever's in power represents all of us. And so I think it's fair to tell them you're not happy with stuff and to be loud about it. Peaceful protesting is our right. And with those rights come responsibilities, right? We want to make sure we're not being aggressive ourselves, right? But assertive is okay. We could put the ass in assertive, and I think that would be a good step forward right about now. Because until people really start yelling, it's easy to brush us off, right? Until we actually go on strike and the poop hits the fan, right? And then they'll try and demonize us for doing that. It's easy to just say, oh, it's just teachers' concerns. Oh, yeah, they're always complaining. And oh, no, schools aren't that bad. I mean, I'm a mother. My children are in school. That was my MLAs. I'm mimicking her. My children are in school. That doesn't mean you know what the hell is going on. Because you don't, clearly. Because if you were a mother who cared about your children and you knew what was happening in your child's building, you wouldn't be answering my emails the way you answer them. You wouldn't be voting for bills and changes that you're voting for. You wouldn't be supporting a status quo with a minor upgrade. Oh, we're going to build some buildings. This is not improvement. Really, it isn't, right? And as I've said before, the election, our democratic process isn't designed to foster long-term change, because it isn't. The type of change that we need is going to take more than an election cycle to see results. And without those results, it looks like they failed, so they change course. It keeps happening over and over and over and over again. Well, we need to elect a government that's going to actually say, you know what, we're going to do what's best for the kids long term. We need to, when they come in, not just throw out, there's a terrible expression, throw out the baby with the bathwater, but dude, why abandon course? Like, let's look at the curriculum changes. I was part of the conservatives started the curriculum reform, and then the NDPs were elected and continued it, and then the conservatives were reelected and threw out everything they'd started. After years of work and consultation with parents. And I mean, I didn't love all of that curriculum either, but at least I understood why they were doing what they were doing, and I could see the scope and sequence, and I understood how it would be implemented, and I could see where the resources were coming from. And they just went, no, we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to hire people who maybe don't know anything about the subject they're writing about. They're going to plot gravity on a globe. We're going to put the financial management stuff into phys ed. Just serious inaccuracies in general, right? Like a dot added to a note adds half a beat to the note. Well, if it's a quarter note, and I mean, most of you are like, yeah, whatever. But in music, it's just no. I'm sorry. I had a lot of fun when that all happened. I would go into the Wikipedias and I would update them, like I say. But in the province of Alberta, gravity can be plotted on a globe, and then people would comment and laugh, and it would last for a couple of days, and it made me feel better. Passive aggressive for the win. But no, our elected officials need to actually understand that the decisions that you're making within your election cycle, Danielle, the next government that comes in, I hope they abandon some of them. I really do. I hope there's things that are just like, new, right? Like, what business of yours what I decide to do for my child's health? I have a transgender child. If I decided that it was okay in our family to do no, this is not your job, right? Like when they say parent choice, they just mean the parents who are yelling in their ears choice or what they personally would choose. They don't mean parent choice. Parent choice is what we already do in the room. If you tell me to call your kid Q, I call your kid Q. If, you're telling me your child has allergies, I manage that and help them with that. Whatever your child's specific needs are, that's my responsibility to try and meet them there where they are. If a kid in the room has two moms, I'm going, yeah, you got two moms. And then the kid says, that's weird, they have two moms. I'm like, yeah, well, you have a mom and a dad, or he just has a dad and he has grandma and grandpa raising him, right? I heard a statistic today, this is, my ADHD one, 10% of children in the United States are being raised by their grandparents. Good Lord. Hats off to the grandparents. Yeah, I'm barely surviving getting through parenthood once. I mean, good Lord. But that's a whole nother thing, right? Like support, right? So you're going to have to check your egos and realize that the decisions that you're making aren't going to see the full fruits immediately, and certainly not within 4 years. I don't see making enough schools and those sorts of things, enough teachers, enough EAs. I don't see any of that happening within the next election cycle. Like, when I look at that, I don't think that's going to happen within my career. I mean, I said I'm 25 years here. So even if I teach another 15 years, okay, maybe. But I would put 10 years on that. I would put 10 years on before we have enough buildings. and staff for them, because it takes you 4 or 5 years to grow a teacher, right? So no, I don't see any of this as short term. So we really, please understand that. And when maybe the next election, those will be the type of questions I'm asking. So what are you going to keep from what they've been doing and build upon? Right? Like what was there that was good that the UCP put in that we can work with? There are actually some good stuff in the curriculum. Not a lot. Sorry, I don't like it. But there are some things. Well, we're not going to throw at everything. Like, for the love of God, no. We don't want to go back to scratch and start building a whole new curriculum again. So what do we have that we can work with, and what can we improve upon? Right? So what do we have for staffing issues, and how can we improve upon it? It's don't throw out everything that they've done, right? Unless it's dangerous, right? Like, some of this stuff is legit dangerous to my students' health. Yeah. Don't support the people who are threatening violence against my students. Yeah. I have a real problem with supporting the homophobic agenda. It's not okay. People are people. If you don't like it, walk away, right? Like, you don't have to engage. If a gay person asks you to marry them, you don't want to say no. I like that example. Sorry. But it's just, dude, like, what do you think that's a good question. What do you think the UCP has done that would be worth continuing? I'd like to hear some comments and feedback on that. Because I don't want the next election cycle to just go back to zero either. Because that's not progress. It's just looking at different shit in a different pile from a different angle. That's not what we need. So, yes, maybe talk to everybody, get the outside people's view on what's happening in the classroom. But unless you're going to engage teachers in that conversation, and healthcare services and social services and policing, I think we all have stakes in this. I think that the steps they're taking to reduce violence and aggression and things require supports from social services. They require supports from the medical world and mental health. They require supports from RCMP and policing. This isn't just a teacher problem, right? Like, we're looking at a bigger societal issue here, right? Kids live what they know. So what does that say? I mean, maybe people need to do their own inventory, because I mean, I certainly know I've had to a few times in my life. I'm not a great mother at times. I've really struggled with some things, and it's really hard to look at yourself and go, oh, I suck. Good God. What? But there's grace, and there's forgiveness, and there's moving forward. And as long as you take responsibility, and that means you don't just feel it, you actually show it, right? Like, people will forgive you, right? And people will accept that you can change, because you can. But this government isn't showing us much that I'd like to hold on to, and that concerns me. But I don't think an election is necessarily the solution immediately either, because, like I said, the type of change we need isn't going to be seen in an electoral cycle, and we're working against systemic issues there, right? Just like some of the stuff in school we're working against is systemic, right? You can't make policies that are broad brushing, right? Like, it doesn't, no, our students are too diverse, right? Your kids all have different needs, and I want to be able to meet them all. And I actually don't think that's an unreasonable thing to think, that I could. Because I almost do, most of the time, with the crappy supports I have right now. Imagine what I could do with support, right? Imagine. And not all the changes are big, but they do cost money. So, don't we have like a surplus or something? Because, like, the oil and gas people have been doing good again. I'm happy for you, right? Like, absolutely. I mean, none of this is a competition, right? It's not a pie. We can all, just because you get more of it, then no, that's not how this works, right? We're all in this together, right? I need the gas and oil industry to be successful, right? Because they support, the economy, and I want everyone to be successful, right? I even want Danielle Smith to be successful at being a good person who listens to her constituents and, actually entertains other people's ideas and isn't just running her own agenda. And that may be me being very judgy, because from where I'm sitting, that's what it looks like, right? It's like, oh, this is what me and my buddies want. This is what these few lab parents over here want. Like, that library study, like, what the actual, Did you know 63% of people responded they had no concerns, never had concerns about the books that are in our library? 63%. Yeah, but, we needed to entertain that whole argument, and maybe we did need to have the conversation. But guess what the solution to that is? Don't let go all the librarians. Like, there's a school in my community that just lost its music room and its Learning Commons library, and everyone's all upset about that. But I don't think people realize they also lost the teacher that ran the Learning Commons. There's no librarian in that building anymore. That reading, writing, arithmetic, right? Yeah, let's lay off the librarians. I don't know. Short-sighted decisions are being made to satisfy a select few, and the rest of us are just carrying the burden. And I guess teachers were just done with it. So, moving forward, yeah, we need to address the issues of violence and aggression in our schools. Parents can support that by providing loving, nurturing homes and finding supports for their kids and lobbying for what's best for their kids, advocating. But, yeah, there's no quick answer, and none of them are free, and none of them are going to happen by September. Except maybe a breakfast program. That'd be great. Thanks. Please go and annoy your MLAs. That's your homework. Enjoy your summer.